The streets of Manhattan bustled with the usual energy of a city that never stopped moving. Fifth Avenue in particular was a whirlwind of honking cars, hurried pedestrians, and the towering presence of landmarks like Trump Tower. Inside the building, Elon Musk sat across from Donald Trump in a private meeting room, their conversation a mix of high-level discussions about infrastructure, renewable energy, and technological innovation. The meeting had been productive, albeit intense, as was often the case when two titans of influence came together. They shook hands as they parted, exchanging nods of respect despite their different approaches to business and leadership. Elon stepped outside Trump Tower, greeted by the cold bite of a late winter evening. He had planned to head straight to his next engagement, but something caught his attention near the building's edge. Amid the chaotic flow of people, there was a stillness, a small, huddled figure pressed against the side of the building. It was a child, no older than 8 or 9, dressed in a thin jacket far too inadequate for the freezing temperatures. The boy's face was pale, his lips cracked and bluish, and his eyes half closed as though he was slipping in and out of consciousness. Pedestrians walked past without so much as a glance, their heads buried in scarves or phones. Elon's heart sank. He had seen homelessness before, even children struggling, but this boy's frail frame and vacant expression made it impossible for him to look away. Without hesitation, he crossed the sidewalk, his long strides carrying him to the child's side. His security detail hesitated for a moment before following, unsure of what their boss was up to. Crouching down, Elon placed a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder and spoke softly, asking if he was all right. The boy barely responded, a weak mumble escaping his lips. It was clear he was severely malnourished and dangerously cold. Elon's instincts kicked in. This was a crisis, and time was of the essence. He turned to his team, his tone firm but calm, instructing them to call for medical assistance immediately. While they made the call, Elon removed his own coat and draped it over the boy, trying to provide some semblance of warmth. He knelt there, shielding the child from the biting wind, speaking to him in a low, soothing voice to keep him awake. When the ambulance arrived, Elon stayed with the boy, ensuring he was handled gently and with care. He climbed into the ambulance with him, ignoring the surprised glances from the paramedics and his security team. The boy needed someone to advocate for him, and Elon wasn't about to leave his side. At the hospital, doctors and nurses rushed to stabilize the child. Elon waited anxiously in the corridor, his thoughts racing. How could a child end up like this in one of the wealthiest cities in the world? He knew systemic issues contributed to problems like these, but in this moment, the solutions felt personal. Finally, a doctor emerged to inform him that the boy, whom they learned was named Daniel, was stable but severely malnourished and dehydrated. He would need time to recover, but he was lucky Elon had intervened when he did. Relieved, but still deeply troubled, Elon began to form a plan. He wasn't the kind of man to let such an encounter be a fleeting moment of compassion. He wanted to take meaningful action. As Daniel rested in the hospital bed, Elon Musk sat in the corner of the room, his phone buzzing with messages and calls. He ignored them for the most part, his focus entirely on the boy. Nurses moved quietly around the room, checking vitals and adjusting IV drips, but Elon hardly noticed. His mind was racing with thoughts of how to help Daniel and how to prevent other children from suffering the same fate. A nurse approached Elon to let him know Daniel would need a few days of intensive care before he could be discharged. The boy was severely underweight and showed signs of prolonged exposure to the cold, but his condition was improving. Elon thanked her, but even as relief settled in, he couldn't shake the question that lingered. What had brought Daniel to this point? He contacted his team and instructed them to investigate. Within hours, they uncovered bits and pieces of Daniel's story. He was the child of a single mother who had passed away unexpectedly a few months earlier. With no immediate family willing to take him in, Daniel had been placed in a temporary shelter. But overcrowding and administrative oversights had led to him falling through the cracks. He had been on the streets for weeks, relying on scraps of food and the rare kindness of strangers to survive. Hearing this, Elon felt a mix of anger and determination. He had spent his life solving complex problems, building electric cars, launching rockets, and designing systems to improve humanity's future. But the system that had failed Daniel was one that couldn't be fixed with technology alone. It required compassion, advocacy, and a willingness to act. The next day, Elon returned to the hospital with a plan. He met with social workers and case managers to discuss Daniel's situation and ensure the boy wouldn't return to the streets. Elon offered to personally fund Daniel's care, including temporary housing and education, until a long-term solution could be found. But that wasn't enough. Elon wanted to address the root causes that had allowed this to happen. He began outlining an initiative, a nationwide program to support vulnerable children and prevent them from being abandoned by the system. The program would provide funding for shelters, streamline access to resources, and use data to identify at-risk children before they ended up on the streets. While his team worked on the logistics, Elon spent as much time as he could with Daniel. As the boy grew stronger, he began to open up, sharing bits of his life. He told Elon about his mother, his love of science, and how he had dreamed of being an astronaut before his life had taken a dark turn. Elon listened intently, encouraging Daniel to hold on to his dreams. He promised the boy that he would do everything in his power to help him find stability, and maybe even a path to pursue those dreams someday. As the days passed, the media caught wind of the story. Reporters swarmed the hospital and Trump Tower, eager for details about Elon's rescue of the boy. Elon, however, refused to make a spectacle of the situation. When asked for comments, he simply said, "This isn't about me. It's about making sure no child has to go through what Daniel did." Daniel's recovery continued steadily, and within a week, he was well enough to leave the hospital. True to his word, Elon Musk had arranged everything for the boy's next steps. A comfortable apartment had been secured in Manhattan, fully furnished and staffed with caregivers who could provide emotional support and guidance. Elon visited the apartment himself before Daniel arrived, ensuring it was a welcoming space where the boy could feel safe and begin to rebuild his life. When Daniel was discharged, Elon personally escorted him to his new home. As they walked through the door, the boy's eyes widened at the warmth and brightness of the space. There were bookshelves filled with stories and science encyclopedias, a desk with a small telescope, and even a set of beginner robotics kits. Elon wanted Daniel to know that his dreams mattered, that his potential hadn't been lost despite everything he'd endured. While Daniel adjusted to his new environment, Elon's team finalized plans for the broader initiative inspired by the boy's story. The program, which Elon named Second Chance Futures, was designed to identify and aid homeless children across the country. Elon pledged $10 million of his own money to launch the initiative, with plans to use technology and data analytics to pinpoint areas where children were most at risk. He also partnered with local governments, non-profits, and schools to create a comprehensive safety net. The goal wasn't just to provide temporary relief, but to create lasting change, ensuring children like Daniel didn't fall through the cracks again. Despite his packed schedule, Elon made time to check on Daniel regularly. The boy was thriving in his new environment, slowly regaining his confidence and sense of wonder. One evening, as they sat together on the apartment's small balcony, Daniel shyly showed Elon some sketches he'd been working on, drawings of rockets and planets, inspired by Elon's work at SpaceX. "Hannah, you're going to have to teach me how to build these one day," Elon said with a smile, ruffling Daniel's hair. The boy grinned, a spark of hope in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Meanwhile, news of Elon's efforts spread rapidly. Stories about Daniel's rescue and the launch of Second Chance Futures captured public attention, inspiring others to take action. Donations poured in, and several prominent figures reached out to Elon, offering to support the initiative in any way they could. The positive momentum was not without its challenges. Critics emerged, questioning Elon's motivations and whether his efforts were sustainable. Some accused him of using Daniel's story for publicity, while others doubted the scalability of his approach. Elon, however, remained focused. He knew that meaningful change required perseverance and that the lives of children like Daniel were worth every bit of criticism he might face. As weeks turned into months, second chance futures began to take shape. Outreach teams were dispatched to cities across the country, connecting with homeless children and providing them with immediate resources. Data-driven tools allowed social workers to identify patterns and intervene earlier, preventing children from slipping into homelessness. For Elon, seeing these changes unfold was deeply fulfilling. He had always been driven by big ideas and bold solutions, but this experience had reminded him of the power of small, personal actions. Saving one child might not change the world, but it could change that child's world, and that was enough to make it worthwhile. Months after the night Elon Musk found Daniel outside Trump Tower, the boy's life had transformed in ways no one could have imagined. Under Elon's care, Daniel had not only regained his health, but had also begun to thrive academically and emotionally. The once fragile boy now spent his days immersed in learning, his natural curiosity shining through as he explored science, math, and engineering. Elon continued to visit Daniel whenever he was in New York. One afternoon, he brought Daniel to the SpaceX offices, giving him a behind-the-scenes tour of the technology that had inspired the boy's sketches. Daniel was captivated, his eyes lighting up as Elon explained how rockets were designed and launched. As Daniel ran his hands over the cool metal surface of a rocket component, Elon saw something in him, a spark of determination and potential. He realized that Daniel wasn't just surviving now. He was beginning to dream again. That realization reinforced Elon's belief in the importance of giving children the tools and support they needed to build their futures. While Daniel flourished, Second Chance Futures gained momentum. The program had already helped hundreds of children across the country, providing emergency shelter, education, and long-term support. Elon received letters from children and families whose lives had been changed by the initiative, and each one reminded him why he had started this journey. But Elon wasn't content to stop there. He pushed for even greater collaboration between private organizations, government agencies, and tech companies to expand the reach of Second Chance Futures. Using predictive algorithms, the program could now identify at-risk children before they became homeless, allowing for early intervention. Despite the progress, Elon never lost sight of Daniel's personal story. The boy's resilience served as a constant reminder of what was at stake. One evening, as they sat together reviewing one of Daniel's science projects, the boy turned to Elon and asked, "Why did you help me?" Elon paused, considering his response. "Because everyone deserves a chance, Daniel. No one should have to face the world alone, especially not someone as bright and brave as you. And because you reminded me that sometimes changing one life can inspire others to do the same." Daniel nodded thoughtfully, his small hands gripping the notebook in his lap. "I want to help people too someday," he said quietly. Elon smiled, his heart swelling with pride. "You already are, Daniel. Just by being you, you're showing people what's possible." As time went on, Daniel's story continued to inspire others. He became a symbol of hope, proof that even in the darkest moments, kindness and action could create change. With Elon's guidance, Daniel began speaking at events for Second Chance Futures, sharing his journey and advocating for other children in need. By the following year, Daniel had settled into his new life, excelling in school and dreaming big about his future. He often joked with Elon that he would one day work at SpaceX, helping design the rockets that would take humans to Mars. Elon always replied with a knowing smile saying, "I have no doubt you will." For Elon, finding Daniel had been a life-changing experience. It reminded him that while his work often focused on the future of humanity as a whole, sometimes the greatest impact came from helping one person at a time. And though he continued to build rockets, cars, and neural technologies, his commitment to improving lives on a personal level remained stronger than ever. The city of New York, the nation, and even the world came to see Elon's intervention as more than an act of compassion. It was a call to action, a challenge to everyone to look closer, act sooner, and believe in the power of change. And for Daniel, the boy who once sat cold and alone on a street corner, it was a second chance to reach for the stars.